GPS Parent Series is its 30th year of presenting programming to students, families, professionals, free to everyone, no registration. Our ask of everybody is to please, please, please spread the word. Go to our website, GPS Parent Series, find all of the offerings, the weekly offerings offered in four different languages, and please let people know that everyone is welcome here. It's just a delight to see all of you young people here. Hello to the people that are listening at home or in their office. We have this wonderful partnership with the College of DuPage, where 3 programs each year come here in partnership with the psychology department, and we're just delighted. So I see community members here, I see parents here, and young people. This is just lovely. I'm so happy to see all of you. So excited that you're here, Dr. Solomon. So excited to partner with you, Dr. Thill. Please take it away.
But right now I'm going to introduce Dr. Solomon, because we're so grateful that she's here. So Alexandra Solomon is one of the most trusted voices in the world of relationships, and her work on relationships self-awareness has reached millions of people around the world. She's a licensed clinical psychologist at the Family Institute at Northwestern University and a faculty member at the Northwestern University School of Education and Social Policy, where she teaches the internationally renowned course, Building Love and Lasting Relationships, Marriage 101. Dr. Solomon is a prominent clinician and educator and a contributor to academic journals and research, and the author of several best-selling books, including Love Every Day, 365 Relational Self-Awareness Practices to Help Your Relationship Heal, Grow, and Thrive, the book that you can get for free today if you are here, as well as Loving Bravely, 20 Lessons of Self-Discovery to Help you get the love you want. Dr. Solomon has been globally acclaimed as a podcaster. Her podcast is called Reimagining Love, and she regularly presents to diverse groups that include the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and Microsoft. She is frequently asked to talk about relationships with media outlets like The Today Show, The Atlantic, and Scientific American. We are delighted and honored to welcome Dr. Solomon to College of DuPage today. Thank you, Dr. Solomon.
Thank you, Gilda, and thank you, Azure, for welcoming me. And I'm so glad. I love that there are so many college students here. I feel right at home. So I teach at Northwestern University. And also, you know, if after today you're thinking, maybe I want to be a therapist, well, maybe you already are thinking about being a therapist, for sure, stay connected with me, and would love to support you and cheer for you on your way into our field, because Lord knows we need you in our field now more than ever. It's a wonderful, it's a really important place to be in this mental health space, and there's lots of different ways to contribute and grow within the field. So Azure gave me a wonderful intro. So just kind of highlighting that my work, you know, spans these kind of corners of the triangle. I spend some time teaching and training both the undergraduate course. I train clinicians and clinicians who are in practice. And I have a practice of individuals and couples. I've been in practice for, I don't know, 3 decades. And then I'm really passionate about all the translational stuff, like making sure that what therapists do in their offices, what researchers do behind, you know, in their research labs, makes its way out of those spaces and becomes tools for the general public. So those are all, and each of those parts of my career informs and shapes the others. You also should know that I married the boy across the hall from me in the dorm freshman year. We met about 2.5 minutes after our parents dropped us off, and we were just friends. Honest to goodness, we were just friends. And then one night I had a few beers, and then I was like, maybe you're more than my friend. And so here we are all these years later. We now are the parents of college students. So I went from somebody who taught college students when I was not much older than they are to now being somebody who squarely looks like their mom when I'm standing in front of my lecture hall. So it has been wonderful to be on that journey, and now to be supporting my own emerging adults as they find their way with relationships and all the rest of it. Okay, so we've got a plan. I basically am going to talk you through some core principles of healthy relationships. So I know that we've got some folks who are going to be here with their parenting hat on. They're thinking about their own teens, their own young adults. I know there are some people here with their work hat on, thinking about the students that they serve. And I know that there are some young people who are going to be thinking about their own relationship journey. So the way that I wanted to approach this today is to really kind of teach you and talk you through some of, like, what do we know are the core principles in healthy relationships. I'm going to probably come back again and again to romantic relationships because that's like my bread and butter. But what we're going to find as we move through this material is that what's good in our intimate relationships is also good in the conversations with our parents, with our kids, with our friends. My favorite stories from my Marriage 101 class are when a student comes back, like one, I'll just give you a little sample of one. One of the players on the Northwestern football team came to me and he was like, I love what I'm learning in your class. It's helping me not just in my romantic relationship, but in all my relationships. For example, I was in the locker room and one of my teammates was sitting on the bench and he was tearful because he just found out that his injury is actually a season-ending injury. And he said, before your class, I would have had no idea what to do, but I knew that I knew what I could do was like sit next to him, put my arm around him and just like be quiet and stay near him. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like that's the magic. So these skills, you know, what's good in one domain of our relational lives tends to translate pretty well into other domains of our relational lives. We've made the slide deck that we're going to be going through today is available online to you. And then we also pulled together some additional resources. So you can go ahead and scan that code and grab the slides and keep kind of learning and working with the content that we cover today. Okay, so for the parents in the room, you know, the reason that I don't really necessarily talk about parenting, like what you need to be doing as a parent vis-a-vis your kid, because, you know, I love this quote, don't worry that your children never listen to you, worry that your kids are always watching you, you know, and there's so much that we absorb just by, you know, watching our parents. And I know when I became a parent, that was really humbling to know that my kids were watching me, but that is it. When we're young, we're basically like these little social scientists and we're absorbing all kinds of messages about relationships in our, what I call our original love classroom. The family system that we grow up in is our original love classroom. We take in all kinds of messages about how do grown-ups talk to each other. What are men allowed to ask for? What are women allowed to ask for? We take in lots of gender messages. What kinds of feelings are okay to express? What kinds of feelings aren't okay to express? We're little observers. We take in all kinds of messages. So then when we become parents, there's that kind of reckoning of knowing that we are the role models for our kids. And rather than that feeling like something that is fearful, it just means that we get to and have to continue to commit to our own emotional evolution. We're never done. We're forever these like works in progress when it comes to relationships and healing. I mean, I know that I'm biased, but I would posit to you that this relationship stuff is the most important stuff that we can do in our lives. And I've got the data to back it up. So there's a study out of Harvard that's now in its 80th year. So there's been wave after wave of research scientists who started this project back in the 1930s. And they were like, okay, what constitutes a good life? And they took cohorts of young people and they were like, let's just track you throughout your life and figure out what are the keys to happiness and a happy life. And they did blood tests and surveys and interviews. They tracked income, they tracked health status, they tracked trauma and crisis and upturns and downturns. And what wave after wave of this study has found is that there are two pillars of happiness. One is love, and the other is living your life in such a way that you don't push love away. Like, that's it. Money, certainly helpful. Good health, certainly helpful. Not having too many horrifying events in your life, certainly helpful. But where the rubber hits the road is relationships. And when they use the word love, they're talking about all kinds of love. Romantic partnership, family, friendship. Happiness is only the cart. Love is the horse. Positive relationships are essential to human well-being. That's the bottom line. Think about what, you know, the course of a week, like what are some, you know this in our bones, we all know this in our bones. What are some practices that you do on a daily or weekly basis in your own relationships that highlight to you that you already know this, you already get this? What are some things that you do on the daily or on the weekly that show that you understand that investing in relationships matters? And shout them out, yeah. Stop it. Okay, so for those online, what she's saying is that she and her daughter do daily affirmations. I am beautiful, I am strong. And you know that there's no birthday party you can throw for her. There's no trip you can take her on that's going to imprint inside of her like that. When she's an old woman, many, many years from now, that's what she's going to talk to her grandbabies about, guarantee it. Beautiful. Have another example. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So his example is that he and his friends check in on each other, and they've got, it's real clear among their friends that you can always reach out for me. You know, especially with the research around men and loneliness is especially worrisome. I had a guest on my podcast recently who told that he was really tearful. The story had happened like 20 years ago. Oh, he's a man who does a lot of men's work. His name is Connor Beaton. He's a really neat guy. And he started his journey on men's work because he had a dear friend who they've been buddies since they were like this big. And the friend was coming up out of an episode of being suicidal, and Connor didn't know. And he was like, that was like my record scratch alarm clock moment. I was like, what are we doing if my dearest buddy on earth didn't tell me that he was thinking of ending his life, right? Like, where are we at? So that's beautiful. It's great. You're a living example of there's another way to do it. Yeah, give me another one. I love you. You know, so she's saying that she makes sure that she tells people around her, I love you. She says it fearlessly, unapologetically. I love that meme that goes around. It's like, tell your friends you love them, like make it weird, make it awkward. That's great. I love it. Okay. I know that every single one of you could name something, but let's keep on moving. So whether I am sitting with a couple in therapy, talking to my own kids, teaching college students, what I come back to is relational self-awareness. So I think that the best and bravest thing that we can do to cultivate the kinds of relationships that we want, where people feel safe, where people feel like they matter, where people feel authentic around us, is by understanding ourselves. So relational self-awareness is an ongoing, curious, and compassionate relationship that we have with ourselves that becomes a foundation for the relationships around us. It's becoming what we're seeking, being the change we want to see in our relationships. And a big part of relational self-awareness is being willing to look at everything that happens in our relationships in a systemic way, through a systemic lens. So this is the only math problem I ever will offer anybody, which is my stuff plus your stuff equals our stuff. Whether it's a first date, whether it's a conversation with your mom, the dynamics of relationships are such that the stuff that I bring in and the stuff that you bring in combine and commingle to create the relationship dynamic. This is especially important in a world where we search for love by swiping on a dating app, right? Because like no shade, I'm like completely actually neutral on dating apps as long as we know how to use them well, because it's just a tool. But what it can do is foster the idea that the search for love is about swiping until I find the right person. We get really other focused. I could stand here and give you an entire PowerPoint on the ways in which Todd Solomon is a real pain in my booty sometimes. That's easy. We're 26 years into a marriage. I can give you an alphabetized list. I can give you a chronological list, but that's not what's gonna help our relationship. What helps our relationship is when I'm like, okay, why did that thing he said, why did that hurt my feelings? What's the me part of it? The little punchline here, what's it called? Well, anyways, the reason that oftentimes the reason that my feelings are hurt by the things that my husband says is very often that I have spent the day with a self-critical narrative, right? And so my self-critical narrative primes my ears to take what is an otherwise relatively neutral comment and hear it like a personal attack. Anybody relate? Yeah. So what I'm saying to if I'm talking like crap to myself, I'm ready to hear somebody else. I will take, if somebody's lids are dropping during this talk, it becomes all about me. Oh my God, I'm boring. I suck. My career is a shame. I'll go down that whole rabbit hole, rather than that there's somebody's lids maybe dropping because they didn't sleep well, because whatever the heck, right? But that my stuff plus your stuff equals our stuff. That's everything that happens in our relationship is about the dynamics, the cycle. So much of couple therapy is helping my couples start to understand that cycle, because then what happens is it goes from me versus you to the two of us against the problem, the two of us against the cycle. I know that we're making really good progress in couple therapy when a couple says to me, we got stuck in our cycle again. I'm like, yes, that's amazing, right? It's no longer, he's a narcissist, it drives me crazy, he's too demanding, he's too da-da-da. It's the cycle, that darn cycle is sinking us again like a stone. We hate the cycle and we both co-create and participate in the cycle. So you come into your adult relationships with a whole bunch of baggage. We all do. We all do. Our attachment figures care for us to the degree of their own healing, to the best of their abilities at the time that they are raising us. So we've got to hold on to two things that are true at the same time. The big people in your home when you were growing up very likely tried to give you everything that they could give you, and you very likely didn't get everything you needed when you were growing up. I am not in the throwing parents under the bus business. I think that we can hold this, I call it a both and, or a dialectic space where two things are true at once. Our parents tried the best they could, and we have wounds and sensitivities and blind spots that originate from our family of origin experience. Both those things are true. Your love template, your set of expectations that you bring into relationships is formed by the things you observed growing up, like I was talking about before, how you saw conflict handled, how you saw emotions handled, whether or not you saw repair happening between the grown-ups in your house, and the experiences you had. When we are young, we become who our families need us to be. There's this beautiful line from this teacher, Gabor Mate, who says, when we're young, we trade authenticity for belonging. When we're young, belonging in our family, feeling like we are part of the crew in our family, it's essential. It's a survival need. So you became, I became, we all became who our family system needed us to be. This is a family of origin roles quiz that I love. If we had time today, I would talk you through. I've identified 6 family of origin roles: the perfect one, the easy one, the rebel. And invariably, we all kind of fall into one of those roles. And the more your family system struggled when you were young, very likely the more you took on one of those roles of being, I grew up in a family where the grown-ups in my house were actively struggling with addiction and a lot of unhealed, unaddressed pain. I'm the oldest daughter. I became a perfect one, which means that, you know, the function of a perfect one, I'll just do this one real quickly, is that it's like the top-notch student, the athlete, the music aficionado, the one who's like got it all together, the golden child. The function for the family system is we must not be doing too badly if we've got a kid like that. There's a function for each of these roles. The easy one is the one who's like, it's okay, it's fine, it's all right. They kind of fly beneath the radar. The function of the easy one is they don't add additional strain to a family system that's already strained. And on through all 6 of the roles. With each of these roles, there's some gifts. The gift of having been a perfect one is you can put me in front of a room like this and I'm not gonna lose my cool. The challenge is I can be as hard on the people around me as I am on myself. For the easy one, the gift is you can put them in any team, any group project, and they're like water. They'll fit in, they'll do what needs to be done, they're adaptive. The challenge, it's really hard for an easy one to be like, excuse me, this order is incorrect, can you please make it again for me? Excuse me, that's not gonna work for me in this relationship, can we do it differently? The easy one has to work on standing up for themselves, you know, et cetera, on through all these roles. So take the quiz. If your results feel confusing, shoot me an email, we'll talk it through. So the thing that we know for sure is in our relationships, certainly in our romantic relationships, conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. The research shows the quality of a couple, the satisfaction of a couple is not whether or not there's conflict, it's how they handle conflict. The bad news is that few of us grew up in homes where we learned really good, robust, healthy conflict management strategies. The good news is there's stuff that we can learn to do it better. Our relationships, especially our close relationships, exist in these cycles of connection, disconnection, repair, connection, disconnection, repair. That's the cyclical nature of relationships. The goal is not to be happy, easy breezy for the rest of your life. The goal is to make that cycle not enormous, so it's not a huge swing from we're together and ecstatic to we're talking about breaking up, because that is exhausting. The goal is to have the swing kind of get smaller and to have the repair processes be less painful, to learn how to apologize, to learn how to forgive, to learn how to come back together after conflict. So I want to make sure that we get to that stuff today, because I don't know about you, but I did not learn how to give a healthy apology in my house growing up. And my husband has since taught me early on in our relationship, here's what my apology would look like. Sorry. And he taught me that that doesn't count. You don't even get partial credit when you jut your hip out and roll your eyes and say sorry. It does not count like at even a little bit. So lots of us need to have those chances to learn these skills that we didn't have. Making sense so far? Doing okay? I'm gonna just keep going for a little bit here. I'm gonna be eager for your questions. Okay, so, this is hard to see. This just a little silly one. Communication in a nutshell. The yellow is we understood each other, we misunderstood each other. The blue is we semi-understood each other, and then the red is we understood each other perfectly. So there is no red. Because the other thing, especially in our romantic relationships, is the romantic mythology, or what I call the Disney did us dirty mythology, is that if you are my soulmate, not only is the whole pie chart red, meaning that we have perfect understanding, it's more than that. It's also, I don't even have to communicate with you because you so get me. You know what I need before I need it. That's the romanticized myths that we're kind of sold growing up. And so if we're struggling to understand each other, especially when we partner across cultural differences of all kinds, including gender differences and ethnic differences and spirituality differences, when we partner across differences, which frankly we always do, our partner is always going to be different from us in some kind of a way, thank goodness, because we don't want to be with a carbon copy of ourselves. Those ruptures, those little misses, they don't mean we're broken. They don't mean we're not meant for each other. Rather, it's like going to the gym. It's a chance to get a rep in. It's a chance to practice this skill of, I don't think I understood you. Can you say it again? I don't know that I get that. Can you explain it to me differently? Like, walk me through it. Tell me more how you feel. Those misses are the training ground for us to practice patience, for us to learn how to listen more carefully and actively, for us to put down our own defensiveness and desire to explain so that we can actually receive somebody else's experience. Those misses are vital chances to practice something different. Same thing when I'm being misunderstood by you, I can throw my hands up and be like, forget it, you just don't get me. Or I can take that deep breath and slow down enough to take the risk and practice the patience to explain myself again to you, to offer a different window, to maybe drop some of the criticism that's woven up in my description so that you can receive me more easily. Okay. So now we're going to go through some principles. The only way we can do this like relational work of apology, of repair, of slowing down, of asking somebody to explain themselves to us again, the only way we can do that is if we are sitting on a cushion of self-compassion. And lots of us struggle with self-compassion. Self-compassion is not letting each other off the hook. It's not making excuses for our behavior. It's cultivating a gentle and warm relationship with ourselves. It's being on our own team. It's having our own back. Kristen Neff, who Gilda was mentioning, operationalizes self-compassion in this way. It's mindfulness. The psych students, I'm sure, know a thing or two or 17 about mindfulness. It is noticing what's happening in the moment and dropping the judgment. It is simply a description of, oof, I felt really calm on the inside, and then my partner said this thing, and I feel the tears welling up in my eyes. I felt okay this morning. I saw the grade on my test, and I noticed myself shifting into a place of self-criticism. It's noticing what's happening without labeling ourselves somehow for being bad, wrong, stupid, or broken for feeling that way. The second element is common humanity. That deep trust that whatever is hard for me is also hard for somebody else, probably even somebody else in this room. There's really no original human struggle under the sun. We all have our unique iterations of it, but we all have questions about our worthiness. We all have questions about our lovability. We all have questions about our desirability. We all have questions about, can I really trust you? If you really understood me, could you still like me? Those are basically the stuff of being human. And it is self-compassionate to recognize that. The third one is self-kindness, which is committing to talking to yourself the way that you would talk to a good friend. If you wouldn't say to a good friend, you didn't go to the gym today, you suck, don't say it to yourself. And if you would say it to a good friend, I would question the quality of that friendship. Why are you talking to your friend like that? So checking in about, would I say that to a friend? Then why am I saying it to myself? Would I say that to a small child who was upset? Then why am I saying it to myself? And practicing self-compassion is not just tied to your own, thriving. There's like 84 different measures that correlate positively with self-compassion. What they found now is that self-compassion has a direct tie to the quality of our relationships. The more self-compassionate I am, the safer people feel around me. That's like that mind blow emoji right now, like, what? How does my relationship with myself shape how people around me feel? If I'm beating myself up, I'm not safe for you to be around. I'm primed to misunderstand you. I'm very likely going to be as hard on you as I am on myself, et cetera, et cetera. So the research shows that self-compassion is fuel for positive relationship behavior. It fuels empathy. It fuels perspective taking. If I can treat myself with gentleness, then the big thing here is that if I'm not practicing self-compassion, then whatever tiff you and I are getting into is I'm going to fight to be right as if my entire sense of self depends on it, because it does. If I can take myself lightly, because I know that there is no single behavior of mine that is the sum total of who I am as a person, if I know that my behavior in this moment with you is not the sum total of who I am as a human being. If I know that and I trust that and I'm anchored in that, then I can hear, I hurt your feelings. I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings. I can hear you screwed up without that meaning that I suck as a person. Do you get it? Our relationship is safer if I'm able to trust in my own dignity and my own worthiness. Yes. That's okay, go. Yes. Oh, this is such a good question. The question is, if you are at odds with somebody who has not mastered that yet, ergo, they're not particularly self-compassionate, what the heck do you do? This is the, may I swear? This is the shit. Because I suspect if you could do it, you would wave a magic wand and you would give that person self-compassion, because you know that they would feel better about themselves and you know that the stuff between you and that person would be a lot easier. The problem is we can't do that for anybody else. We cannot love somebody else into their own self-worth, and that sucks. That sucks. And for those of us who have a tendency towards a little codependency, that's like so tempting. Like, okay, if I try harder, if I do more, if I, then they're going to feel good enough about themselves that they're going to be able to apologize to me when they've screwed up, recognize that I also have a set of opinions and perspectives, but we can't do that. The thing about self-compassion that's so hard is if you and I have gotten into a tiff and I can't practice self-compassion, rather than feeling guilty about having hurt your feelings, I'm going to feel shame. And the moment I go into shame, I cannot be in connection. It's an either or. It's like it's an on-off switch. If I'm in shame, I cannot be in connection with you, because I'm now in a hall of mirrors. It's all about my suckiness. And your pain, your hurt feelings, it's like, you guys are too young to think about Charlie Brown's teacher, like that wah, 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 like where you can't even, if you're upset with me and I'm in shame, I can't even hear you basically, because I'm so wrapped up in my story of my suckiness that I can't even hear you. I can't even bear witness to your pain. So that's really hard. Somebody can, from a place of guilt, make a repair. Like appropriate, healthy guilt is, I don't like how I treated you. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but if I hurt your feelings, I hurt your feelings, and I feel guilty about that. Guilt is a motivator. Guilt is like, I did something that's not aligned with the person I want to be. Let me make it right. It's an activating emotion. Shame is a collapsed emotion. So what helps is therapy. What helps is you letting go of that scramble to try to make it different for them. You can say something like, listen, I can tell that you are really being hard on yourself. In fact, you are being harder on you than I'm being on you. I'll be here. Like, I'll be here when you are ready to talk about it, but I can't make that feeling go away for you. Hopefully that gives you something to noodle on. Okay, good. I'm not a fan of going to bed mad. I can't say I'm a fan of it, but I'm definitely not a fan of a conversation that lasts for multiple hours under the idea that if we just keep talking, we're going to get to the nugget of it. What the research shows is that even people who have high relationship satisfaction scores, once they are flooded, they're upset, they're angry, they cannot figure out the golden equation of love. They're totally focused on blame, or shame. Once people have crossed that threshold and they're in that blamey, shamey space, even people with high relationship satisfaction scores can't right the ship without a break. So I'm a fan of a series of brief conversations that are punctuated by pauses, by a nap, by a shower, by a run, by a walk, by a meal, rather than a marathon. So there are times when I'm talking with a couple and I'm like, if you're going to have a conversation outside of my office, you set a timer, I will give you 40 minutes. That's the most you can do. I've had couples where they do these like marathon, multiple hour-long things. Also, when both of you has been using, that's not the time to have a conversation. That's the time to pause and say, actually, I love us too much to try to muddle through this while we're drunk, while we're high, while we're exhausted, while we're upset. I love us too much to do that. I can't be for you the person I want to be for you right now. So taking that pause, this is that beautiful Viktor Frankl quote, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that space is our power to choose our response, and our response lies our growth and our freedom. So if I can't see, if my story is you made me mad, if that's my story, is that you did this thing to me, I need to pause and step away because that's not honoring the golden equation of love. You did a thing, I had a kind of reaction, but I have the power to choose how I bring my hurt feelings to you. And the way that I bring my hurt feelings to you shapes how you're going to be able to respond, whether or not you're going to be able to repair and make it right. Big fan of timeouts. You don't have to call it timeouts. If you grew up in a family where punishment was timeout, you might not want to use that term. Call it an intentional pause, call it whatever you want. But for those of us who grew up in a house where people stormed off in anger, this can be kind of a tricky tool to even imagine using. But storming off in anger and pressing pause and stepping away, those are radically different things. An intentional pause is, I love us too much to keep going. I need a break. So when you call a timeout, you don't say, I think you need a break. You say, I think I need a break. I think we need a break. If I'm the one calling the timeout, I'm the one who's in charge of figuring out when we reconvene. So it can't just be used as a get out of jail free kind of a card. I'm in charge of figuring out when we're going to come back together and talk more. And then during the break, I'm going to try to regulate my system. Because what the research shows is that our state determines our story. When I am upset, I am more likely to tell a story about how you don't understand me, you don't care about me, actually nobody cares about me. My upset nervous system has the power to create a story, and the upset nervous system only has one kind of story, and it's that nobody's here for me, nobody's here with me, I'm all alone. So regulating the nervous system, taking a shower, taking a walk, listening to music, regulating the nervous system can help me remember, actually, you are a good person. I know that you have my back. I know that you struggle sometimes. And that's what this is. So regulating our nervous system then has the power to change the story that we tell about what's happening. Bonus points during the break if you do this thing called the conflict hack that my colleague at Northwestern came up with. The conflict hack is you step away, you say, I'm too upset to keep going, I need to press pause. You step away, you get out a piece of paper or open up a note on your phone and you write about the story from the perspective of a neutral third party who loves both of you very much. It's a pain in the ass because all you want to do is stew in all the ways that you're wronged and sharpen your argument and figure out how you're going to prove your point. But if you do this, it's really helpful. So for me, it would be like, Alexandra is feeling X, Y, and Z. Todd is feeling A, B, and C. So I'm writing as if I'm like writing a story in the third person. What that does is it forces me out of my myopic story perspective into that relational, systemic, my stuff plus your stuff equals our stuff story. It's a really powerful practice. I saw a hand up, yeah.
I think it's, I definitely agree with you that, taking a minute to step away.
Yeah.
But, and I also like that you mentioned, like, that you're not, that you can't just use it as like a,
Yep.
I feel like that's like a tactic a lot of like manipulative and like abusive people use.
Yep.
Is like, if they're trying to like hypercritical of you and you're like arguing back with like very like valid points, they'll just like I thought like I speak from experience and people just like okay, I just need to like step
I need a break. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just will never come back.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
For the people on live stream, this is an observation about like, this makes sense because it is used. I mean, I'm sure you are not alone. Other people have used that tactic of like, you've been walked away, someone's walked away from you and they walk away in anger and it's like a huffy, I can't even be with you anymore kind of a thing. It's a blamey, like I'm opting out of this rather than listen, I can't be in this conversation the way that I really want to be, the way that you need me to be, the way our relationship needs us to be. It's very different. Yeah, you're right. I think that any of these tools, I'm sure, can be weaponized in the wrong hands. That's right. We have to use these tools for good, not for evil. Because you're right. That's a terrible feeling of like, especially it sounds like, right, your experience is you're raising really valid points. What you're doing very likely is holding up a mirror. You're asking that person, hey, can you look maybe at the way that your words and your behavior are impacting me? You're like, can you just take a look in the mirror? And they're like, okay, I'm out. I don't want to look at that. I want to just put this on you. Yeah, very hard. And then it's like, there's this expression of like, stop going to Walgreens to shop for a dining room table. Like, Walgreens has some things. Walgreens has, medicine and Advil and really good chapstick. Like there are things you can get at Walgreens, but you can't get your dining room table at Walgreens. So when somebody has shown you who they are and what they're capable of, stop expecting something different from them. You know what I mean? And it's not, and then because a part of what we do is when somebody else isn't able to change or be who we want them to be, we refuse to change, because we do the same thing, trying to get a different outcome. That's us actually refusing to change. They've shown us. That person has shown you, here's what I will do when you ask me to look in the mirror. I'll mic drop and I'm out. So then it's on you then to say, I'm actually just gonna stop shopping at your store for an item that you don't sell. This item is not available at this store. Doesn't mean nothing's available. I am not also a fan. I think there are, the rates of estrangement right now, 28% of us are estranged from somebody significant in our lives. I think there's a little bit of a pendulum swing too far the other way, where we say things like, this relationship isn't serving me, this isn't working for me. I think we're a little bit too kind of individualistic right now. We've overcorrected. I think our relationships oftentimes have a blend of choice and obligation, of duty and desire. I think there are ways of staying in relationships with people who are challenging, as long as we let go of the wish it can be different. Then it's like, okay, if I let go of the wish you could be different, then actually there are some things I can feel with you. I can expect this from you, but I can't expect that from you. Luckily, it takes a village, so I have other people in my life who can fuel me and fill me and source me in those other ways. Okay, feedback wheel, another pain in the ass kind of intervention, but really helpful. When I need to come to you because you've said something that hurt my feelings, here's me using the feedback wheel. First of all, I say, are you available for feedback? Like going meta, like I make an appointment with you. Are you available for feedback? If you say yes, then I say to you, okay, this is what I recollect happened. Right there, I've disarmed you because I haven't said this is what happened. I'm saying there's a humility in saying this is what I recollect happened. This is what I made up about it. The story I told myself is you must not care about me very much. That's the story. I don't know whether you care about me or not, but the story I made up is that you don't care about me. This is what I felt. I felt sad, hurt, angry. This is what would help me feel better. It's such a more approachable way to give somebody feedback, to set them up for success, to set you up for success, to not fall into defensiveness, rationalization, explanation, flooding. If I can come to you in that way, I'm stacking the deck in our favor that you can actually hear me, apologize, and we can move on. Oh, you guys. Okay, close your eyes. I'm skipping this one because we're getting short on time. I'll just say it quickly. Behind every criticism is an unmet need. When I feel critical of you, if my urge is to be like, you're always on your phone, this is a really easy one. You're always on your phone. That's an easy thing to do. It's easy to say to you, you're always on your phone. What's the unmet need? The unmet need is I need your attention. I would love to connect with you. So speak the unmet need. When I walk in the room and you're looking at your phone and you don't even glance up at me, I notice that my feelings are really hurt. I would love for us to be able to put our phones away and actually like connect with each other. Can we do that? Can we do it now, or can we do it maybe like in an hour from now? So when you get critical, challenge yourself to identify what's the unmet need you're having. What's the longing? What's the yearning? What do you need to ask for in the relationship? It's more vulnerable, but it's more effective. Okay, do you need a book before you go? Slide right here. That's fine. Go, 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 go. Do it. Do your thing. Okay, heartfelt apology. Very quickly, what the research has shown is that what's required in a heartfelt apology is taking responsibility. I did X. I did that thing. And saying the thing that I did hurt your feelings or left you feeling like I don't care about you. Those are two key factors: responsibility, acknowledging the other person's feelings. Here are the things not to do. Oh, and then bearing witness. Tell me how you felt. Avoid if. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, because dude, I already told you you hurt my feelings. You don't need to say, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Avoid but. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but you know I didn't mean it. The but negates everything that came before. I teach my couples that in therapy very early, so they learn to leave the buts outside of our office. And then sometimes they're like, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean it. I'm like, that's a but wearing a trench coat and a little mustache and a hat. Like, that's a but masquerading as an and. I'm not falling for it. You don't need to, when you make a heartfelt apology, you don't need to say, I didn't mean it. Intent and impact have nothing to do with each other. You obviously did not have intent to hurt your loved one's feelings because you are not a sociopath. Benign intent does not negate harmful impact. We wish that it did, but it doesn't. My benign intent does not negate the harm I did to you. I did harm to you. Doesn't mean I suck as a person, doesn't mean you should walk away from me and never talk to me again. I can hold myself in warm regard while recognizing that I did something that was hurtful. Also, maybe the thing I did, if you did it to me, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. Does not matter. If your feelings are hurt, that's a problem. What's really hard in an ongoing relationship is the thing that I did to you that hurt your feelings probably is a chapter 3 kind of a situation. And the thing I did to you maybe is the thing I did to you because of something hurtful that you did to me back in chapter 1. You know what I mean? There's oftentimes like a series of events and you do your penalty flag on the thing that I did to you in chapter 3. And I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck? What you were doing in chapter 1? That set me up to do the thing I just did to you in chapter 3. Does not matter. Whoever drops the flag, the penalty flag, what do you say in the game? Drop the flag, throw the flag? Whoever throws the flag is the one who gets to request the apology. And the apology, the image that I use, is an apology as a customer service window. Your feelings are hurt. You are coming to my customer service window. I have one service available for you, and that's a heartfelt apology. Not an explanation, not a rationalization, not me asking you to look at the things that you did to me. It's a customer service window. It's not a debate. The customer's always right. And the thing is, if I get this right and you walk away feeling heard and understood, then a little while later, I can say, beloved of mine, can we please now rewind the tape because I have something that hurt my feelings earlier. And now I'm asking you to go behind the customer service window and bear witness to the thing that you did that hurt my feelings. Avoid the passive voice, I'm sorry you were offended. Avoid cross-complaining, you did why. Offer to repair. If I can think of something like, hey, I wonder if it would be helpful if I did this. Even if you don't want me to do that, the fact that I offered it is meaningful. That's you feeling my contrition. Okay. The flip side of the apology is forgiveness. So if and when I offer you a heartfelt apology, now the ball is in your court and you are tasked with forgiveness. And forgiveness is tricky business. And I have there on the slide, forgiveness in an ongoing relationship. I'm not somebody who believes that you have to forgive people who have abused you or done harm to you or where you've stepped away from the relationship. I don't think I have no moral high ground or ethical or religious take on that. I know there are people who forgive things that feel absolutely impossible to forgive, and they do it not because the other guy deserves it, but because they want to liberate themselves from the pain of carrying it. But that's between you and you and you and your therapist and you and your higher power. But in terms of an ongoing relationship, we don't have a choice. If we're going to stay in the relationship, we have to learn to practice forgiveness because we have no option besides to be in relation with people who are as deeply human as we are. So there's a Goldilocks issue of finding that sweet spot between a shrug and a grudge. And some of us, when we are hurt, we're too quick to forgive. We go, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay, it's fine, everything's fine. When we shrug it off like that, we A, don't make space for our own feelings, and B, we cut off the chance that the other person can actually learn from their behavior. Right? If we go faster than the person who hurt us, they may not have that moment to learn and understand the impact of what they did. Now, the other end of the spectrum is the grudge. The grudge is where I hold on to my pain and I show you, like, look what they did to me. Can you believe it? And look at you. Have you heard my story? And look how painful this is. And where I kind of like wear it like a badge and it kind of becomes this little like cozy blanket I wear around me. That's the grudge. And the grudge is not good for my health. It's not good for us. But it can feel safer than taking the risk of taking off the cloak of grudge and being back in vulnerable connection with you. So that desire, that urge to wear our grudge as a safety measure is a defense or a protection against the vulnerability of being connected to people who have the power to hurt us, you know? So we got to find that sweet spot. There's no such thing as forgive and forget, even as much as we wish. Forgiveness is basically a canceled debt. It's saying I could keep you, keep blaming you, but I'm going to let go of it. Sorry, you guys. Okay, then 4 questions. I'm sorry. I like these questions when you're coming up out of a conflict with somebody. I really like these questions because it can be hard to process the conflict without getting back into the conflict. So here's the questions. What are you proud of about how you handled this frustrating moment? What are you proud of about how the other person handled this frustrating moment? And then what went differently this time around than it would have gone 2 weeks ago or 6 months ago or a year ago? You also could ask, what went differently between you and I than it would have gone in each of our families of origin, if it's a romantic relationship? Those are some nice questions to process the problem without getting back into the content of the problem. that's what I have for you. We have a few minutes for questions. I want to hear where you're at. We've got a microphone for Azure.
So if you have a question.
Gilda's got one.
What's the biggest mistake that parents make or adults make when having, we're going to sit down and have a conversation? What's the biggest mistake?
What's the biggest mistake that parents make or any of us make? You know, I will tell you, especially with parents, I think, like I spend a lot of time helping adults heal from the experience of having been lectured at by their parent. I've got a lot of people in therapy with me where a big part of their family of origin pain is that their parent sat them down and just talked at them for so long. The reason that's painful is that in order for a young person to cope with that feeling, I mean, that's a trapped feeling, knowing you can't say anything back, knowing you can't walk away. So what happens in the nervous system when that's the experience is a kind of collapse of the nervous system as a way of coping. And then fast forward and they're in a romantic relationship and they're in a moment of stress and conflict. What do? They collapse. So that's a big one. So parents, I know it's so hard. And when your kid, like there's so much we want to say to our kid and spare our kid. And we've got these morals and whatever, but that's not the time to talk. Only talk to your kid when you can do more listening than talking. And to know, like one of my nails on a chalkboard thing is, I don't want my kid to make the same mistake I made, because newsflash, they literally can't make the same mistakes that you made. And when that's your parenting approach, is trying to have them not do what you did, you're parenting out of fear. You're parenting out of a like 180 reactive thing. Your kid can't make the mistakes that you made. And by the way, I don't believe in mistakes. I believe in FGOs, effing growth opportunities. So if you have a thing in your life, parent, that you call your big mistake, that means you need to get your sweet booty into therapy and figure out how it wasn't a mistake, it was an FGO. That thing you did, I guarantee, if you look at it with somebody, not that you ever would wish it on your kid or your enemy or whatever, but I can guarantee there's something that you learned from it that you take with you that has changed you. And yes, you wouldn't want your kid to also have that same experience, but there's so much more you can offer your kid than like a protect them from the thing kind of a experience. Yeah. That's my soapbox on that one. A little soapboxy there. I think for all of us, you know, this like, it's a silly thing, like we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listening more than we talk is a really good practice. And there's a thing called listening to respond versus listening to understand. So often when we're listening, when I'm listening to you, what I'm actually doing is figuring out what I'm going to say next. That's listening to respond. Listening to understand is I'm not even thinking about what I'm going to say next. All I'm doing when I'm listening to you is actually trying to like cross a bridge into your world and actually see something from your eyes, from your perspective. Listening, there's this beautiful quote, I don't remember who said it, but listening well is so close to being loved that most of us don't know the difference. There's no difference between being listened to well and being loved. It just feels like the same thing. So to become a good listener is one of the best things that you can do for your relationships. What else? Yes.
One of our at-home listeners is asking about how would you address timeouts that aren't respected?
Yes. Yeah. So how do you deal with a timeout that's not being respected? So the best way to do this is to, during a time of calm, say, hey, I went to this lecture, this crazy lady was telling us all this stuff about relationships, like throw me under the bus. Professor Solomon says, and just say like, let's agree to this. Would you want to try this? So you'd, in a moment of calm, you say, I think one of the things that might help us is if we agree that we can use a pause or a timeout. You can call it whatever the heck you want to call it. So you agree to it at a time when you both are calm. Like when I'm as a therapist, when I'm teaching this to a couple, what I say to them is like, I teach it. And then I say, come back next week and tell me all the ways that it went wrong. Because it can take a while. Because if I'm really fired up and you're taking a pause, I might be like, but I got more to say. So I might be a little bit harder to sell on the idea. And and it might take me a little while. So I think there might be like a little bit of a learning curve. And I think at some point, I mean, I don't know I think power is a part of this. But if what's happening in our relationship is you're asking for a timeout and I'm not honoring that, then we have a power problem in our relationship, right? Because I'm saying I don't respect you, I'm overpowering you. So that's the deeper issue, is less about the timeout and more about an imbalance of power. Because in our relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, parent, adult, child, there ought to be a level enough playing field that either of us can step away from this conversation if and when we need to. Couple more, one more.
It strikes me that perhaps understanding a family system is kind of like foundational material for working at the area that you are addressing. How does one go about tapping into these kind of learning experiences?
Wonderful. So the question is, it seems like what's really foundational in all this work is understanding the family system. What are the best ways to understand? Like, what are the methods for understanding the family system? I have an online course called Intimate Relationships 101. For college students, actually, you should know this because we have a college student discount for it's basically my Marriage 101 class turned into a self-guided online class. And there's I want there to be like no barrier to entry. So there's a college student coupon, but if that's even not affordable, you let my team and I know, and we'll give you access in whatever way we need to, where we spend a lot of time on how do you understand your family system. What I mentioned earlier about family of origin roles, that's a big part of it. It's like, who did you need to be? When I'm getting to know somebody in therapy, I always make a genogram. I diagram out the parents and the siblings. I ask questions like, how do you describe each of your parents? If they were married, how do you describe their relationship with each other? And then it becomes, who did you need to be in your family? What was the role you played? And then what was the pain point? Like, what's the vulnerability, which is like basically what's the way that you felt growing up that you hated to feel? And those tend to be things like, I wasn't prioritized, I wasn't safe, I wasn't able to relax. Like, what was the kind of chronic pain, fear, worry you experienced? And then how do you cope with that is the other one. So the family of origin wound, the vulnerability, and then the coping strategy. So for me, I was a perfect child. The way that I felt my vulnerability over and over again was that I felt really responsible for everybody else's feelings. And the way I coped with that was by overperforming at school, creating I did a thing when I was growing up called preventative homework, which is where I got all my homework done. And then I just made up some more homework for things that might come up in class the next day. That's a trauma-informed coping strategy. It worked because I got really good grades, but that was me attempting to create a sense of control in a system where I felt very little control. And there's 84 different versions of that. What was the role you played? What was the pain you felt? How did you cope with that pain? That's a very kind of distilled version of it.
It also there can be a desire to revisit the conflict, but you need to protect yourselves from getting back into the conflict. So I have 3 questions that can guide you in that conversation so that you don't just relitigate the thing. And those questions are, what are you proud of about how you handled this frustrating experience? What are you proud of about how your loved one handled the frustrating experience? And what went better than it would have gone 2 weeks ago or 6 months ago or 6 years ago? That trend line. Those are some nice questions where you can kind of talk about the problem without getting back into the problem. And I'm going to pause there and be really eager to hear how all of that, I know that was a lot. Someone said after I gave a talk recently, they're like, you're like a fire hose. I was like, I don't think that's a good thing, but I just had a lot I wanted to share with you. And I'm excited to hear how your wheels are turning and what's coming up for you.
Excellent. We're going to get right into it. Love everything you said. I'm not going to take one more minute to say thank you. I'm just going to get right into it.
Go.
This is from Mila. At what age can you expect them to use the pause? Oh, you go ahead, Mila. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was thinking about you have college age kids, and we have a lot of teen parents, and there's a maturity growth that happens with teens. So at what age can you expect teens to be able to be able to handle some of the tools that you mentioned, like taking the pause and agreeing to that, and um, having some of these things kind of come into how you talk through conflict?
Yeah. One of the students today stayed after and she's like, I have a 5-year-old daughter. Can we start doing the pause? I was like, you can try it. You can say to her, you know what? There are some times that mommy talks to you in a way that I don't like, where my voice gets real sharp or I get a little bit loud. And there are times when also you get a little bit, sharp with me or loud with me. I wonder what it might be like if we notice that we're getting into that, for us just to say, time out, take a break, step away, you know, and just it's a trial, it's all trial and error. Certainly with teens, I think it is reasonable. And it's not, especially if parents use the actual timeout, like go sit in the corner when kids were little, you might need to use some different language, because this is not punishment. This is not consequence. This is relational. This is about the relational ecosystem of the home. These are agreements that everyone is making with each other on more of a shared platform, not of equality, because parents and kids are never equal, but it's like, listen, my love, I need these tools the way you need these tools. And part of how I'm committing to showing up as the best parent to you that I can be is that sometimes I'm going to press pause. I do this with my son, and I have been doing this together for years, because he and I have a tendency to, we get heated, we get intense, we want to be understood. And I will say to him, I got to step away, because I love us too much to be talking to you the way I'm talking to you. So it's trial and error. Definitely, prefrontal cortex is not fully online until we're 25. So, and when our kids are being impulsive and fired up, it might be really hard. So it may be, can we at least take this conversation on a walk? Walking and talking is so regulating. So if our kid is not able to pause, can they at least pivot? Let's get our coats on and go outside and have this conversation while we're walking, because it might go better that way.
Thank you.
Great. Here's a question that just came in. What is the biggest mistake that parents make in talking to their teenager and trying to have a discussion?
This came up earlier today too. It is what, I don't know if it's the biggest one, but this is one I see a lot. I have people in therapy with me who are 30, 40, 50, 60, and what they're healing from is the god awful feeling they had when they were kids or teens and their parent would lecture them or just go on and on and on. And listen, I get it. As parents, we get when something has happened, we really want our kid to understand why that was problematic and the consequence of it. And here's an example, and here's an allegory, and here's a moral to the story. And we can get long-winded. The problem is when we think about it from the kid's perspective. When a parent is lecturing a kid, the kid can't move. The kid is stuck. The kid can't push back. The kid can't talk back. The kid can't step away. And so what do? They kind of collapse on the inside. And then what happens there? Then they grow up. And when they're an intimate partner to somebody else and their partner comes to them with some heightened emotion, what do? They collapse on the inside. And when we're collapsed on the inside, we can't be in dialogue. We can't be present. So then I'm spending time as a therapist, kind of helping them heal that wound. So the biggest mistake parents make is talking too much to their kids. More listening, less talking, more asking questions, more being curious. It's hard, but our kids can take us, our kids can handle us in doses, little doses.
Yeah. Here's a question about compromise. So my partner and I, we sit down and we work together. And then ultimately how it ends is, well, why should I compromise for you? You're not compromising for me. What then?
Okay. Step 1, erase the word compromise from your entire vocabulary. You will never, and I don't say never very often, you'll never catch me here using the word compromise. Why? Because compromise has the energy of loss power and control, right? Because it's what you just, Gilda, the question captures it. If I'm talking with you, if I'm trying to compromise with Gilda, the only thing I'm thinking of is how can I keep the most of what I have and give up as little as possible. I'm thinking about what's mine versus what's hers. So get rid of that word and instead use the word agreements. When I'm going to make an agreement with Gilda, she and I step into a space together and we're talking about what can we do together to protect our relationship from the impact of this difficult challenge we're facing. It's us, we're together, we're looking at the dynamic kind of shoulder to shoulder, and we're coming up creatively at things that we can do together that are relationally protective, and that are joint. It's not about mine versus Gilda's. It's about this is our relationship to care for. And what does the relationship need?
Similarly, in the conversation, you're this give and take, and you just have this feeling that you are so right and they are so wrong.
It's so painful. Yeah.
I do in that moment, to do all the things you just said we shouldn't do, the gunny sacking and all of that. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one. And because what we do when we feel like we're right is we start pulling in reinforcements. My girlfriends say, my therapist says, the research that we pull in the reinforcements. So when, one thing which is so frustrating is couple therapists love to say, you can be right or you can be happy. I don't think it's quite that binary. But what I will say is that feeling of like, but I'm right. What that feeling says is the thing that you need more than anything else is for your partner to validate that your perspective makes sense, that you are bringing wisdom to the table, that you are not crazy, that the need to prove that you're right says that you're longing for affirmation. You're longing for it you're longing for it from the other person. You're longing for them to affirm you. And their inability to affirm you, that's really the problem, right? Because in a relationship, it's like the challenge is where are the kernels of truth in my partner's perspective? And if you love your partner and you married them for a reason, you've got to be able to see that there's a kernel of truth in their perspective. So if you are holding really tightly on to that need to be right, it may be because your partner is not giving you any ground, not giving you any validation. And then my question is, what's blocking your partner? What's the fear for them of what do they think they lose by saying, I can really see where you're coming from? Because they only have something to gain by validating, your perspective or some part of your perspective.
Beautiful. This is our last question. Very briefly, those 6 roles, I thought that was just really brilliant. Can you just talk really quickly about that? The
Yes.
roles. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The 6 roles are the perfect. So these are the family of origin roles. So a family is a system, and all systems, whether it's like a pond, like an ecosystem, or a family system or a work system, one of the properties of a system is it's drawn to balance. It's drawn to homeostasis. And when a family system is strained, think untreated addiction, think poverty, think unhealed trauma, think marital conflict. The more strained a family system is, the more it tries to create balance by casting everyone into very narrow, very rigid roles. It's like in a healthy family system, some days you can be a little boisterous, and some days you can be a little quiet, and some days you can be a little cranky. You can show up any old kind of way and still belong. In a struggling family system, it's like there's a brittleness, and there's like, we can only handle you this one way. And so sometimes it's like you become a perfect one. You're the top-notch straight A student, superstar athlete, and that's how you try to kind of affirm that everyone in this family is okay because look how good this kid is doing. Sometimes there's an easy one, and the easy one is like, it's okay, it's fine. They kind of fly beneath the radar. They don't rock the boat. Perfect one, easy one. There's a struggling one. There's a peacemaker, a parentified child, and a rebel. And I'm not going to go into all of those because I have a podcast episode for each of them. There's that quiz. There's lots and lots of resources in my world where you can learn more about them. The reason I want you to know what your family of origin role was is because you very likely play that role now in your adult relationships. So if you were a perfect one when you were a child, you believed that you had to be beyond reproach so that everybody else would be okay. So what does that mean? That means probably in your marriage, it's real hard for you when your partner takes issue with how you've handled something. You probably get defensive. You probably hold your partner to the same impossibly high standard that you hold yourself. Why? Because that's how you coped when you were little. That was your survival strategy when you were little. If you were the easy one growing up in your adult relationship, it's probably very hard for you to say to your partner, wait a minute, that's actually not going to work for me. I'm not going to be able to do it that way. It's hard for you to kind of push back or speak up or ask for your needs to be met. And if you haven't connected those dots explicitly, then you're just kind of knee-jerk repeating the past without realizing that there actually is a pattern here that you're falling into. So I love the roles because we all have one. It means that none of us are screwed up or all of us are screwed up. There's no better, worse, family of origin roles. It's just understanding what yours was, what your partner's was, and it kind of opens the door to some interesting, fresh conversations about why the two of you may have different perspectives on the issues that you're struggling with.
Does that mean you were comfortable in that role? So you're used to that role? Is that what? Brilliant.
Yeah, it's what you. It's like your operating system. It's what you think. The easy one believes. In order to be loved, I have to not protest. I have to not push back. Now, it gets a little more complicated because sometimes I was giving a talk a few days ago and someone was like, I was an easy one as a kid, but now I'm a rebel. Like now I'm like protesting everything. And I was like, yeah, that is sometimes if we were one way when we were growing up, sometimes we do flip the script and we say, never again. I was easy when I was growing up. Nobody paid attention to me. I was like wallpaper and never again. So then sometimes we overcorrect, and now it's like we call foul on everything our partner does because it's like, you have to notice me, pay attention to me. I have to have a voice. I can't lose my voice. So the other thing is, yes, sometimes we do like kind of flip roles. So that's also, you'll hear in the podcast episodes more about that. But it's all just a way of giving language to what was the pattern then and what is happening now, because there's some relationship between who I was in my family growing up and who I am in my adult relationship with my partner, but also my adult friendships, my adult work relationships. So there's lots of good stuff there.
Dr. Solomon, there was so much good in this hour that you gave us, and it doesn't stop there because you've given us this wonderful book, this resource, your podcast. We'll be checking it out regularly. Everyone that was here, I'm getting so many thank yous personally for this hour, and I can't thank you enough. It's been just an honor to spend the day with you today. I couldn't be more grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. This was both of these events were so lovely. And I felt so just supported. It was really easy and wonderful to be with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mila. Thank you. You know what we do now? We go hug the kids. So we're all going to go hug the kids.
I'm going to go hug my kid. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mila. Thanks to everybody. See you next time.